Of course, this Q&A can go on till midnight.
All right.
Let's see who wins. Wim, is this a happy ending or is this a sad ending? It is so heartbreaking, but it is so uplifting also. What do you say? I think I saw people crying. I see people also. I mean, but it isn't a sad ending, is it? Or what was your...
I think of it as a good ending. It is... I think Travis is doing the right thing, and he's the one who destroyed this little family with his jealousy, and he realizes he would destroy it again, and he realizes the bigger task is to reunite his son with his mother, and it's better for the two of them to be together than the three of them being a family that doesn't have a chance. So he does the right thing, and I always thought I shot the right ending. I was very convinced of it. And then the film got picked up by an American distributor. And when they were going to release the film, they said I should come and talk to them at the office of 20th Century Fox in Los Angeles. So I went to the office, and I thought they wanted to talk with me about how they were going to release the film. Harry Dean was very eager that it got a good distribution, because Harry Dean, the lead actor, he had been in 100 movies, and he always played secondary parts. He played side characters, and this was the first leading character he played in his life, and people and all his actor friends in Hollywood loved him, and he was a very, very loved person in Hollywood, and he's a fabulous actor. And this was his big break, although he was already in his late 50s. So, and he was hoping very much that they would do a good job. But then they didn't call me in order to talk about the release of the film. They called me in order to talk about changing the ending. And their deal was very simple. The deal was, Wim, we can get a very wide general distribution for this film, but you have to do only one thing. See the car in the end when it drives away? We don't want you to do anything with the actors. Don't worry, you don't have to shoot much. You only have to shoot how the car does a U-turn on the freeway. And then we can give it a wide release, because then it will be a happy ending. I said, I'm sorry, guys. I'm not going to do your U-turn, because I think this is the good ending. And my actor, when I told him this story, he said, Wim, you idiot. You should have done the bloody shot with a car. What a damn idiot you are. Because the film didn't get a wide release, and he didn't get a nomination like he had deserved. And so that was the end of the movie career in America. No happy ending, but I think it is a good ending. And a U-turn is a lousy ending. Yeah.
So a man is trapped, eh?
A man is trapped, at least if you're... But you see, I'm a free person, and I didn't accept the deal, and I still love the movie, and I live happily ever after.
And of course we can't but not talk about the last scene. I mean, it is... I've seen the film many years ago, I have to admit, but it's just something that stayed with me forever and ever. The notion of this separation, this notion of memory, the notion of discovering, and just that 1 second when you think she knows, When I think, you know, you just get for one, I don't know what happens, her eye moves or something, and you feel
She
she's
starts
got it.
crying and she realizes who is telling the
Who's
story.
the other guy? Yeah, who the guy is. How did you write this? Did you have it? Did you imagine this mirror that is not being able to see both ways? I mean, where you can only see one way. This idea of the peep show. How did all that come? Because it just, I mean, it is one of the most phenomenal scenes in cinema, I think.
Well, credit goes to two people. I mean, I admit I had the idea with the two-way mirror. I had the idea of creating a peep show that is not like any other peep show on the planet. And actually, I don't know how any other peep show is. I've never seen a peep show. I've seen an empty peep show when we looked for locations. I've seen a place called the Keyhole Club, and it was closed for years, and I visited it, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting place. But we didn't use it. And
This is not pornography. This
no,
is
it's not
more,
pornography.
this
It's
is
a social.
therapy.
It's a social institution. Yes, it's therapy. It's women who do therapy for men who can finally talk because they know they cannot be seen and therefore they feel they can talk. So it's almost a little bit of a utopian place, and the girls who work there are more like social workers, or they're doing a therapeutic work. Yes. And I always thought these places could exist for real and they'd be pretty fun to have because they don't harm anybody and the women do an important job. But then again, nobody picked up on the idea. Except in Brazil, they had a chain of Paris, Texas people, peep shows. But I didn't want to see them, what they did there. They were different. The credit goes to Sam Shepard, who wrote this scene. And I have to tell you a little bit how this came about, because Sam Shepard wrote the first half of the script. He and I loved each other and loved working with each other, and we agreed that Sam would be with me during the shoot, because I'd always dreamt of having a writer next to me when I was making a movie. And so he said, yes, I'll do that. So we'll shoot the film, and we only write the first half, and I will be with you on the shoot of the first half. And when we get to the middle, I will have witnessed everything, and then we can keep writing it so we can write a story that is truthful to the characters and that will come out of the story. Because if we write it now, months and months before the shoot, it cannot be the truth. So he agreed, and it was my dream come true that with the writer on my side, I would start shooting, and we had something written, and then we slowly get to a point where I would write then every day and slowly get to the end of the story. That was my dream. But then something happened, and Sam Shepard fell madly in love with Jessica Lange, and I couldn't blame him. And he got a chance to make a film together with Jessica, who he adored. They were madly in love with each other, and they started to go make a film in the north of the United States while I was shooting in the south, and he forgot all about his commitment to this bloody German who wanted to take him to Texas. So he said, Wim, I'm sorry, I just have to go with Jessica. And I, of course, accepted, but then I got into trouble. I shot the first half and got to the point where we had stopped the screenplay, and then I stopped the shoot. This is at the moment when Travis and Hunter leave Los Angeles to together look for his mother. And that's where we stopped. We didn't know how they were going to find Jane. We didn't know in what situation she was. We had no idea. So I stopped, and Sam was 2,000 miles away, way up north, shooting with Jessica, and I phoned him and I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you, Wim. I'm also rewriting the movie I'm now on, And if you tell me how you want the story to end, I think I can write the dialogue. But please find something. I cannot invent it. You have to at least write the story, and then I can write the dialogue. And it took me 2 weeks to ruin my brain and think of the second half of the story, together with my assistant Claire Denis, a great woman director. She was my assistant, and Claire saved my life because Claire and I were really a great team, and she also did Wings of Desire with me. She was my assistant on these 2 films, and the 2 of them were the only ones left over. The rest of the crew went home, and we had to figure out as quick as possible how to end the movie. And we were quite desperate. We couldn't really come up with a plot until I remembered this place we had found in Port Arthur, which is a border town between Texas and Louisiana. It's a terrible rat hole of a city. And we went there because Janis Joplin went to high school and she was a hero of mine. I went to see the city and it was lost in the middle of nowhere. We never shot in Port Arthur, but we met this club called the Keyhole Club, and I remembered it. And then I had this idea of a peep show and of a different kind of a peep show, and I wrote the whole story of the second half in one night and dictated it to Sam Shepard on the other side, and he wrote this dialogue that you're referring to in 2 nights. And he sent it to me. The 2 peep show scenes, there's 2 of them, and both were written by him like 2 one-act plays. He's a great theater writer, and he writes fantastic dialogue. And these 2 scenes were written so the actors could really perform it. And they loved their dialogue so much that Nastasia Kinski and a good old Harry Dean Stanton, that they said to me, Wim, this is such beautiful dialogue. We decided that we want to do it in one go. And we would always shoot it in 1 take. And like an idiot, I said, okay, that's a good idea. But then they always interrupted after a minute and we had to start the whole thing from scratch. And we used so much film that, like never before in my life, because film reels were 12 minutes. And we could do the scene in 12 minutes, but if after one of them interrupted after a minute, we had to start with a full screen. So it cost a shitload of money. And we, in the end, always shot the whole scenes in one go. And it was the last days of the shoot. And it was a memorable shoot because, and this is the other credit, goes to my cameraman, because as he found out that this mirror really exists. We could order a mirror, a 2-way mirror, where actually he could see her and she couldn't see him. And I said, oh, this was half our budget almost. It cost $20,000, which was insane for a piece of glass. And I said, come on, it's so much money. I'd rather spend it on the shoot and the actors pretend. And Robbie said, it's going to be so different if it really works. It's going to be so different if she cannot see him. And then I thought about it and I thought, do you think you can do it? Can we really create this with a real mirror? Because I knew that on the other side, on her side, you had to put so much more light because this mirror takes 2 stops. 2 stops for DOP is a lot of light. And in her little room, it was terribly hot. It was blazing hot. And after each take, Nastasia Kinski had to renew her makeup because it was all running off. It was incredibly hot there. So it was difficult to shoot with the mirror, but it was all worth it because it really made the scene happen. That he could see her and she couldn't see him. And then if he turned the light on him and she turned the light off in her place, it worked the other way around. So all that was due to Robbie Muller, who had the courage to say, let's do it with a real mirror. So, and it made the scene. And in a strange way, it made the whole film work, because that scene became the whole film, yeah.
You know, we listen to a lot of country music and it feels sometimes a little banal, sometimes, very nostalgic. But in this film, suddenly the music is it just adds so much to the characters, to the situation, to everything. And that last bit of guitar that we heard now, I don't know, it pulls at your heartstrings, or I don't know what it does. I just walked into the theater and I was hearing it again. So what was this relationship with music? And it's in all your films it's not music that is really always composed for the film, but is, as you said, a part of your film. It's one of the elements of the film.
The story of the music of this film is quite simple, because it's one musician and basically one instrument. It's a slide guitar played with a bottleneck, that is with the top of a bottle, the glass bottle, and it's over the middle finger, and Ry Cooder plays it with this bottleneck guitar, and it's a very, very powerful sound. And the guitar becomes like a really talking instrument. It's very human, and it's deeply emotional, and basically it's blues music, but it's incredibly strong. And I like the idea to have only one instrument, and one instrument very much linked to the landscape we see. And Ry Cooder, this is the first score he ever recorded, and we knew each other for years, and I had wanted to make another film with him, but that was a studio production for an American studio, and the studio had said, this is a guitarist and this is not a composer. We would like to have a music made by a composer, not by a guitarist. And they had said no to Ry Cooder, and I was very sorry, and Ry as well. But we had shook hands, and we said, next time you're a free man and you can yourself decide which music you want, we'll do it. So years later we made Paris, Texas, and Ry Cooder is an incredibly accomplished guitarist, but he doesn't write music. He's one of these many musicians who plays music, and extraordinarily well, but he cannot write notes. So he said, Wim, in order to do the score for this film, please let me do it the way Miles Davis made the score for Elevator to the Scaffold. And because he had read that Miles Davis had performed the score in a movie theater in front of a big screen, and had played his trumpet to the music in the theater. And he said, that's the way I want to do it. And so we organized an empty movie theater in Los Angeles, and he had his recording equipment in the movie theater, and he recorded the sound in front of a real big screen like here. And we played the film, and he played the scene that he recorded, and he recorded it over and over and over again, 20, 30 times, until it was perfectly linked to the image. And only then he said, okay, that'll do. So over several days he recorded the music with his only instrument, the guitar, and later he overdubbed a little bit of some effects and a little bit of piano and some wind sounds, and that's all he ever did. And when I was sitting in the booth and listening to his music and seeing my own film, but silently playing to the music, it felt to me that he reinvented the film with his guitar. It was almost like he reshot it. It became a different movie. And ever since, none of my films, I feel, is so linked so closely and so intricately to one instrument like Paris, Texas. And so they're inseparable, Rai's guitar sound and the image of Paris, Texas. He's really a total genius, and I think this soundtrack influenced many composers for years afterwards. And I don't remember how many commercials I saw on television with a look-alike soundtrack and a bottleneck guitar that tried to imitate Rai Kura. It was a very fashionable thing for a long time. So I'm taking my time. Somebody has a strategically important place right in the middle.
Yeah. Red shirt first.
Okay, red shirt. Wow.
Hi Wim. So yesterday you talked about how your adaptation of Scarlet Letter, you felt like this was a woman's story that should have been told by a woman, and you felt like you couldn't do 100% justice to it. I understand that this is not entirely Jane's story, it's just as much as Travis's story, but still this is a very prominent female character. In fact, Jane in her pink sweater is one of the most recognizable imagery in all history of film. So my question is, when you're directing such a prominent female lead, does that Scarlet Letter thing play back in your mind? I would love to know how you got good at something that you were critical of yourself to begin with.
Well, I think this is the first female character that I was happy with and that I felt I had succeeded in representing somebody truthfully. And maybe that mirror situation really helped me a lot. And the fact that it is the same story but told from two different persons. First he tells his story and she's listening, and then she tells her story and he's listening. And the invisible third character is the little boy. I think that helped me a lot. And I was very, very happy with Nastasia Kinski's work, and we had already worked once together 10 years earlier in a film called Wrong Move when she was still 14 years old, almost still a kid. And there she was 24 and she was a very accomplished actress. And I felt that with this film I had broken through that invisible wall of not being able to represent a female character appropriately. She was the first time that I thought, well, I can handle it after all. I'm very proud of this character. And the thing is that the two of them had such a close relationship. And the two of them worked so hard together on this dialogue because they basically had just 3 days to learn these 20 pages, each of them. And she helped him to learn his, and he helped her to learn his. And so the two of them were really very supportive of each other, and that helped Harry Dean a lot because he was scared he couldn't handle 20 pages. And Nastasia helped him day and night. They were rehearsing, and vice versa. And so it was really a collaboration between the two actors and me, and we were very close on this scene. And I think you feel that we worked really in unison. And of course, this dialogue pulled us through because I think this is very, very powerful dialogue, and it was made so you can really speak it. And Sam has had I said had because he died, but Sam had a great talent for dialogue, for American dialogue, and that helped me a lot also, that the character was very truthful to itself. Thanks.
My question, before that I want to say this is a very dream come true moment for me, because watching my favorite film on the big screen for the first time with the man who made it. Thank you for this great 4K restoration. And my question is this: there is this little boy in this who played the hunter character. He is having, he have that close relationship bond with almost every character in this film, even if with his real dad or the daddy who just brought up him. And so how, even though he is not having a dialogue with his real mother, Jane, So the question here is, how was in casting that little boy for this character, and how did your experience with that little actor in this particular, especially in the particular climax scene, how was it? And also, I'm a big fan of your soundtrack of Until the End of the World. That is very important playlist for me for every time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy that you saw the film here in this theater, because I think it's a truly excellent projection here. And remarkably, I haven't seen a better projection of it myself. They have really great projector and a beamer here, and this is a beautiful theater. And you've seen it under immaculate conditions here. So we spent a lot of time on restoring this film, and it was done from the original negative. And it was very funny that for me too, we restored it almost 40 years after we shot the film. And I realized that I saw the film differently in the restoration. I spent months and months on the film, on the soundtrack, and on the mix and the image and the color correction. And I realized now that for me, the part of the little boy was much more important than it had been for me at the time. At the time, my entire attention was on Travis and Jane, and now I realized my attention had shifted to little Hunter, and I realized how powerful a part he plays in connecting the two. And I can't stress enough how beautiful the presence of this little boy was, and he was very, very self-confident. That I was looking for a long time for this child, and we had seen several child actors, and they had already made several movies, and it was hopeless. They were like spoiled kids. They knew how to act, and it's the worst if a child has already done movies and they're completely spoiled and they produce something that they think is acting, but it's hopeless. So I was really desperate. And then I met an actress, Karen Black. She's a famous actress in the 80s, or 70s especially, in America. And Karen said to me, I heard you're looking for a boy. You should see my son Hunter. He just turned 8 years old, and you just come and visit us, and we have a coffee in my garden. And Hunter had no idea I came to visit his mother in order to meet him. We just got along really beautiful from the beginning, and we made fun together. And in the end, without doing ever any rehearsal or anything, I said to Karen, yes, thank you for introducing me to Hunter. I think he's who I was looking for. And he knew a little bit from his mother, because he had been with her on shoots, he knew a little bit about acting, but he had never done it. And he was very self-confident, and he soon realized that the better he felt himself about doing a scene, the better it was for me as well. And he said, Wim, it would be very important that I don't have to learn all these lines exactly, but you tell me what you think should happen in the scene, and I put it in my words, okay? Because I think I'll be much better if I don't have to learn it. I think he was plain lazy, but it worked really, really well. And he always surprised us, and Harry Dean and him became the best of friends. And of course he was so curious to meet his mother, because in the movie they only meet her, and actually he never really meets her except in the very last scene. And that last scene was the most, even if the peep show scenes were powerful, that was a hell of a scene when he really looks at her for the first time and embraces her. And when he he really fell in love with his mother at that moment, and that was a heartbreaking moment. And he was a hell of a kid, but he didn't make any other movies.
Oh.
I think he made one TV movie afterwards, and then he decided he didn't want to be an actor. He had been in this film, and it was a great experience, but I talked to him later, and he said, acting is not for me.
Oh.
He thought what we did was not acting. So he was really beautiful. He was a beautiful young man, and he's now a filmmaker himself. He wrote movies, and he made a film festival in Dallas. He was a festival director. Hey, and he's made short films, and he always wanted to make a feature film, but I think he's still working on it.
Hi, Wim. Here. Right, here.
Where are you?
Here.
Oh, here. You're so close.
Yes. I have watched pretty 3 movies only of yours, actually, so far. And I have noticed that you use nature to tell your stories very well, actually. I mean, Perfect Days and in this movie as well, you use the elements of nature to advance the plot and emphasis on the moment. And I have seen this in someone else, and you mentioned her name today, Claire Dennis. And I want to ask you that, is she your, very perfect successor?
Well, Claire was the best assistant any director could possibly have. In both films, she saved my life, and she was a force of nature. And after Wings of Desire, I said, Claire, no more assisting job. You know I have to make your own films. And she did, and she makes very powerful films, and she's a very courageous director, and she's dynamite. And I'm very, very fond of her work, and she's a truly independent film director, and she's one of the great ones, yes. And I'm very proud that I sort of contributed a little bit to her formation, but only a little bit. In the process, she saved my ass.
Yeah, hi Wim, this is, I'm a big fan of your work.
But where are you? Oh, in the back. Sorry, I don't really see until I'm funny. Yeah, but it's fine, okay.
Yeah, so Paris, Texas is one of my favorite films of yours. I just wanted to know more about the cinematography of this film, because if you just pass it every frame of this film, you can almost make a photo book. It's the best work I've ever seen when it comes to showcasing the landscapes and the nature part of it. So if you could elaborate more on that, it would be better. I mean, and also the color palette in these films. I've seen this in Eric Romer films, especially the costumes and the way it works. So after that, I watched it in your film. So if you can tell me more about it.
There's a little secret about the color in this film, because Robbie used a lot of natural light, but also, in all interiors, also a lot of neon light. And he used neon light in a way that it's never been used before, because neon has certain sort of strange extra colors, like almost a little, how should I say? It almost, usually in movies, if you use neon lights, there's too much yellow in it and too much poisonous yellow-green light that is produced by neon, and usually it's corrected out. And Robbie said, explained to me, I'm using neon light, but we have to keep it in the color palette and color correction. And because in most labs, they want to correct the shit out of it. They want to take it out because it looks poisonous. It looks like a mistake. And it really created a strange out of balance in this. And there is a lot of strange green in it sometimes, especially in all the night scenes. And that was Robbie's secret for this film. And we dared to... Got it. So we dared to use an approach that we never used before. Robbie and I made 10 movies before together. And because this was in America, on the 2 films before, Robbie had not been able to work with me because he wasn't union in America and we couldn't shoot together for 6 years. And then we finally could make Paris, Texas again, and it was a great joy for both of us to work again together. And we did something we hadn't done in all the 10 films before. Before, we had always prepared each other the night before. Robbie and I sat every night and planned the next day of shooting and designed the shots and really knew the next day how we're going to shoot a scene. And in Paris, Texas, we said, or I suggested to Robbie, and he was courageous enough to accept it and do it together with me. We never knew in the morning what our first shot was going to be. We said, we'll be very early every morning on the location, and at location, we'll study the light and we study the place, and we let the place show us the scene. And that's what we did. Place in this film is utterly important, and it always directed our way to shoot a scene, where to place the actor, the angle, because the West is full of unbelievable light. And it's almost scary how Kodachrome the colors are and how strong the light is and how bland and almost pure each color appears. So we decided to come to the set every day. And it drove our production manager crazy because they always want to know your first shot the evening before, and we never gave them the first shot. So we were there, we looked, we sat there, we studied the light, we waited for the sun to come up, and then we said, okay, we're going to start this way. And then we shoot that. So we let the light and the place help us find the shots. And that made a huge difference. And it was scary because you then had to work fast. Once you found out how you wanted to do it, you had to work fast in order not to lose the light. But we loved it and we became quite good at it. And after a while, it was our favorite method. And we said, why didn't we never do this before? Why did we always sit down the night before instead of looking at the place and the light? So it became something that we're very fond of in the course of the film, and we became good at not being prepared.
Oh, I'm here in the middle. Is somebody else waiting to go first?
No, you go.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much for bringing all these films to us, and not only is it fantastic to see them, but you've been so generous also with your time and your sharing. It's so wonderful, and I love many of your films. And of course, there's Wings of Desire, Buena Vista Social Club, Perfect Days, that I hold so high. And yet I really want to say that my very favorite of all of them is Don't Come Knocking, which I saw again today. And for anybody here who, if you love Wim Wenders and you haven't seen Don't Come Knocking, I really highly recommend it. It's another Sam Shepard screenplay, and then Sam Shepard's acting in it, and so is Jessica Lange, who you mentioned is his real wife, and then Sarah Polley, I think, is one of the greatest actresses that we have in English, and now she's directing, of course. But anyway, so I just wanted to open it to you to say anything about what that experience was like working with that unbelievable ensemble and such a playful and elevating movie. All your movies are very spiritual. That one had a special kind of joy and delight throughout to me, and I just would love to hear you say anything about what your experience was like working with those people and on that film. Thank you.
Well, not many people probably know Don't Come Knocking, but thank you to bringing it up, because it's the second time I wrote a script with Sam Shepard, and this time he was on my side. And this time he didn't run away with Jessica, but he brought Jessica, and the two of them are in the film. And they played the most heartbreaking man and woman scene, or husband and wife scene I ever shot in my life. And it was great to shoot with the two of them in the West again. And it's almost the funniest film I ever made because it's a little bit of a comedy. And Sam Shepard plays an actor. He plays the last cowboy, so to speak, the last cowboy actor. He's an obsolete actor. Nobody shoots westerns anymore in this film and in this story. And he's the last guy who's still on horses and thinks he's a hero, but in real life, he's a total flop. And he's a disastrous father. And he goes to meet his son, who he never met in his life. And finally, when he confronts his son, he turns out to be actually a miserable father. And he confronts the woman with whom he had this son, and she's still angry at him. And then he realizes he even had a daughter. And it's a terrible family story, and it's really quite a comedy. And Sam had a fantastic, he wrote the dialogue in it too. Anyway, that's another movie. And let's have one last question after that. Oh yes. I'm a little sad tonight because, do you remember the scene in Paris, Texas, where Travis comes back to Los Angeles and one night he walks around and he walks and walks and then he crosses this bridge and there's this funny voice and then he meets this crazy guy on the bridge who shouts at the car, this sort of caller in the desert, and he walks on and you still hear this man. This man appears in 5 of my films and he always played little parts. And the first time he acted in a film of mine was Lightning Over Water, and he was Nicholas Ray's assistant. And he played little parts in 5 or 6 of my films. And the caller in the desert in Paris, Texas, that you saw today is really a tremendous part. And the funny thing was, he was on the set the very first day, because Sam Shepard had written this little speech for this character that he thought somewhere on the film you have to find a place where this caller in the desert will appear, who is condemning the civilization and all these cars and all of that. And somewhere in the film you have to put him. So I said to Tom, come to the shoot, he lives in New York, come on the first day because I don't know quite when this man will appear. So he was there from the first day, and we shot it on the last day. And he traveled with us for the entire film, always ready every day to do his speech, because I didn't quite know when we were going to find the place where he could have his speech. And then finally, on the last day, I said, I cannot shoot this last day without finding the place for Tom. And then he had his speech, and he was ready. And Tom died just 2 days ago, so I'm a little sad. I found out a little late, so I met him 2 weeks ago in New York, and he wasn't so well, but he was still a good friend. So he appears in... So now we have the very, very, very last question. The last, but what? Not the last.
Hello.
Oh, somebody has a... Okay.
Hello, sir. It's a really great opportunity to meet you. You're one of my favorite directors. So my question was about the usage of color in this particular film. So you've chosen like very bold costumes with great colors. So I wanted to know what the thought process was behind in choosing the costumes and the very bold colors.
You want to answer? Robbie Miller and I thought hard about colors, and we thought about the quality of the primary colors in the West, and we thought about how every color almost is primary there. And we thought, well, it was an American film, and we thought of it as Travis as of an archetypal American character. So we thought red and blue and white would be nice to have in the film. And it was a little simple maybe, and we didn't quite stick to it, but we figured red would be an important color in the film. So the first time Harry Dean shows up, he has this red baseball cap, and the first thing you see of him is his little cap. And then you cut closer and you realize, and from then on he always keeps this cap, and red always appears as the color representing his longing to reconnect to the love of his life. So there's a color dramaturgy in the film, and it's very American primary colors, and it's due to the light of the West and the incredibly blue skies there, because especially if you use a Polaroid filter, which we always did, to give it more depth and to make the sky a little darker. So, and then you have all this blue, and we added the red, and that became our color dramaturgy. Thank you for the question. Thank you very much for your patience with me. Thank you, Bina.
Thank you, thank you, thank you all. It's been a wonderful 2 days. Thank you, Sai. Thanks, Chalachithra Academy.